Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to be looking at how to jack up your BMW E46. So if you've been looking at how to get your E46 up on 4 axle stands, you've come to the right place. Alright, so before we get into the job, let's see what gear we need. So obviously you're going to need 4 axle stands. Now the E46, there's various different models. You've got the coupe, the convertible, the sedan, the hatchback. They all vary in weight slightly, but generally they're all under the 2-ton mark. So we want to get axle stands that are going to be rated for the weight of the car. So these are 2-ton axle stands, and then same with the jacks as well. Just make sure they're rated for the weight of the car. Now we'll be looking at using 2 jacks for the method I'm going to use today, and also you want a decent set of wheel chocks too. And then to go along with the jacks, I normally use a small piece of wood just on top of the lifting point there. That just gives a barrier between that steel, that harsh steel of the jack and the car itself, because you don't want to damage the car itself. So that just gives a sort of sacrificial layer with a bit of squish, if you like. And then for getting the rear of the car up, we're going to be using a larger piece of wood just to go under the differential bracket there. Okay, so the E46 has got 4 lift points here. See if we can see it under here. Just there, look, the plastic lift points. So there's one here, one at the back there, and then obviously 2 the other side. Now these lift points would be used either with a shop lift, or if you were jacking the car up on the side of the road to change the wheel with the supplied jack in the boot of the car. So today we want to get the car up on 4 axle stands, so we're going to use these plastic lift points to sit the car down on the axle stands. So obviously we can't jack up there because we're going to want to put the axle stands there. So we're going to look at the lift points where we're going to put the jacks. Alright, to start off with, we're going to get the front of the car up in the air first. So the first thing we need to do is chock the rear wheels. Now I've currently got the handbrake on, so I'm going to let that off. And now the car's just sitting against them rear chocks. And the idea behind taking the handbrake off at this stage is that when we jack the front of the car, obviously the car's going to move like this, and we don't want to put undue strain on the handbrake shoes there, and in turn the handbrake cable can end up stretching it a wee bit, so it just prevents any issues there. And if you are just putting the front end of the car up in the air and using 2 axle stands, maybe you're doing an oil change at the front or whatever, where you don't need to have the rear of the car up in the air, once you have got it sat on them axle stands, just make sure you put the handbrake back on, so there's definitely going to be no movement there with handbrake on and the chocks. Now then, initially we're going to use the first jack on that plastic lift point just to be able to get the car up just enough to be able to get this jack underneath and under the chassis rail. The reason behind that is, with this being a coupe, it sits that little bit lower and it's just too low to be able to get that red jack under there and under the chassis rail. So if you come up against the same, this is a good wee trick. Another thing you can do is just run the front wheels up on some blocks of wood, and that'll just give you enough height to get that jack under there and under the chassis rails. Okay, so if we take a look under here, you can see where the piece of wood is there, and it's just about to make contact with that rail that runs from the front to the back of the car, that chassis rail if you like. So that's a nice solid point to jack up on, as long as the piece of wood straddles the edges of the rail itself. So we'll get this side so far up in the air, and then we'll move over to the opposite side and we'll do the same with that, and we'll just bring it up nice and steady like that until we're high enough on both sides to slide them axle stands underneath the lift points. Alright, so that's the front end of the car up in the air high enough that we can slide our axle stands underneath them lift points there, and then we'll just back the jacks off and lower that down so it's sat nice and firm on the axle stand. And as you can see, the weight's off the jack there, and same with the opposite side. Okay, so I've removed the jacks out from under the car now, and then going underneath the rear here, we're just going to do this with a single jack, and I've got the larger, thicker block of wood there, a nice wide one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to jack it up on the metal brace that goes underneath the differential, so don't jack it up on the differential because it can cause damage to it. So we're going to aim for the metal brace underneath the differential. Okay, so we've got the rear of the car high up in the air now. You can see we've got the jack stand positioned under our lift pad there. So what we'll do now is lower it down so the whole weight of the car is sitting on the 4 jack stands. Okay, so there we have it. The car's now sitting nicely up on 4 axle stands, and we can get underneath there to carry out any maintenance that needs to be done. Now another step that's worth looking at once you have got it up on the 4 axle stands is just grab hold of the car, give it a good shake just to make sure that it's not going to fall off them axle stands, and just check each one, make sure it's all sitting stable. You want to be 100% certain that when you get under that car there's no chance it's going to fall. If that means putting some extra stands underneath without touching the car, and if that means positioning the jacks under the car and just jacking them up enough so it's just not touching the car, because you don't want to relieve any weight off these axle stands, but just enough that if it was to slip it's going to land on something else other than you. And like I say, you want to be sure before you get under the car. If there's any uncertainty, get a professional to check it out for you. So that's the process I use to get my car up in the air. Now there are various other different ways you can do it, but that's the way I prefer. I've owned a couple of these cars over the years and that's the way I've always done it, and it's always worked for me. Now there is another point at the front of the car, this aluminium shield that sits underneath. You can see where it's dimpled in at the front there. It's what a previous owner's done. Some people use that as a jacking point, and it folds in the wee lump that sticks out there on the aluminium plate. Now it has got a solid cross member underneath it, but you will end up ruining the aluminium plate. It'll bend, and each time you jack it up it's likely to get more bent and buckled, so I don't like doing that to the car. It doesn't feel right. That's why I go for the chassis rails. We'll just take a closer look at them rails under the car. Just along there, look, behind the plastic. So that's where I had my jack, right there. Alright, so there we have it. Hope this video helped some of you guys out. If you found it interesting, don't forget to give the video a like and make sure you subscribe for more BMW content. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks for watching.